humans are drawn to luck. In fact, there are whole industries built around giving people a slim chance at a reward, and they make millions every day. Limbus company is a gacha game, which is too based in gambling. However, today we're not here to talk about that, no. We're here to explore one singular ego skill, Ishmael's Wingbeat. This ego is incredibly chance-based, and there is a subsection of players that devote their time and resources to making Wingbeat as consistent as possible in hopes that at its peak it will rival other powerful strategies. Pretty recently I've put out a video on the best ego skills in Limbus company. While that video does have a bunch of mistakes, not including Wingbeat isn't one of them. Today I want to venture into the world of Wingbeat fans and all the ways to make this slot machine of a skill at least somewhat consistent. Before anything else, let's look at the skill itself. Wingbeat is a 2-coin ego skill with 3 base power and 7 coin power. It gives a lot of healing to Ishmael and 1 ally, but we're going to skip over this for now. The second coin of the skill can be reused up to 5 times on heads hit, and it inflicts gluttony, fragility and bleed. It also costs you 1 or 2 SP every time you hit heads with it. With the gluttony fragility in mind, and the passive effect of the skill itself already active, Wingbeat can deal 310 damage to a neutral enemy if it flips heads with all 7 coins. This is a decent chunk of damage, but the main problem with this ego is the fact that flipping all heads in a Wingbeat only has around a 6% chance of happening, if no support units are in play. This makes Wingbeat entirely undesirable, as your chances for 6 damage are almost twice as high as your chances for 310. But if this calculation stopped here, this video wouldn't exist. So, how do players increase the odds of hitting a jackpot with Wingbeat? Well, I find there to be 2 main support units that help Ishmael maintain high SP. Those units are isang and Butler Faust. Both of these identities have support passives that allow you to heal SP on hit under certain conditions. Let's start with Faust. Her support passive ability allows the lowest SP ally to heal for 2 SP on hit against an enemy with 5 or more sinking, up to 4 times in a turn. This passive is then upgraded to healing for 3 SP instead at Uptime 4, and moving forward I will be talking about the Uptime 4 version of the ability. Already, this effect requires setup. Getting 5 sinking on an enemy is pretty easy, however if you don't also inflict 4 count, you won't get its full effect. To fully set up the ability, there are 2 ways you can go: build a sinking team to naturally stack sinking, or use a rhyme shank. We'll get to the problems of using Wingbeat in a sinking team later, so let's focus on rhyme shank. As Respin 4, this ego inflicts 5 sinking potency and 5 sinking count, which is pretty much perfect for our purposes. That being said, sinking potency is only inflicted at Respin 4, so you have to spend a lot of resources to upgrade rhyme shank as well. With Faust's passive active, the chance at a perfect Wingbeat rises from just under 6% to 11%, effectively doubling your chances. While this is a significant change, it's still far from good enough for consistent practical use. To help even further, we have isang. He also has a support passive that allows Ishmael to heal SP. However, his passive differs from Faust by only being activated twice in a turn, but giving a lot more SP in its best use case. On hit, Ishmael heals 2 SP per debuff on the enemy, up to 6 SP. If the enemy has bleed, she heals 3 more SP. If both activations take effect against an enemy with 3 debuffs, one of them being bleed, this passive can heal up to 18 SP in a single turn. The biggest problem here is that the passive requires multiple debuffs, including bleed, to be inflicted on the enemy. Wingbeat does inflict bleed of its own, but only with the second coin, meaning that the 2 activations of statics will be wasted on an enemy with no bleed, cutting down the SP gain by at least 6 SP. This can be mitigated by using Wingbeat in a bleed team, but that makes using Rhyme Shank for Faust a lot more difficult. Roja is already a bad pick for a bleed team, but also the team lacks in Gloom production, leaving you with few opportunities to use Rhyme Shank. Isang could have helped, but he's on support, so you don't get Gloom from him. In the best case scenario, with both passives active and the enemy having 3 debuffs including bleed at the start of Ishmael's attack, the chance for 7 heads rises to 33%. This effectively means that every third Wingbeat will deal 310 damage. With Yisang's effect being so front-loaded, this also means that a lot of Wingbeats will hit for 4 or 5 coins, bringing the average damage of the skill up by a lot even if you don't hit all heads. Well, that's the theory. While I personally still wouldn't rely on a 33% chance at good damage, those of you who devote yourselves to Wingbeat should be happy with such a number. Now I want to tackle the practical issues of Wingbeat. First off, we have the damage. The base damage of 310 that I presented at the start of the video is calculated assuming that the passive ability of Wingbeat is active and rolls plus 10% on every coin. The first Wingbeat in an encounter will be weaker as it does not have access to the passive. Also, all the other Wingbeats will fall around 300 damage as the passive isn't as generous in game. When used in the right situation, Wingbeat can obviously deal a lot more than 300 damage. If used against a staggered Gluttony Wicked Normality, it can go up to 1200, which would actually justify the 33% success rate, but that is first of all situational, and also has to compete with the increased damage of other skills as well, making the comparative damage increase no more important than it was before. This kind of damage comes at the cost of giving up a key unit in either bleed or sinking. Ringing Isang is the single best bleed team damage dealer, as he can dish out crazy damage and crazy power against enemies with a lot of bleed. Faust, on the other hand, is a powerful sinking support, and one of 2 units with access to Echoes of the Manor, a powerful sinking team debuff. The best teams to put Wingbeat are in fact Sinking and Bleed, as they both can set up the passives for lower cost than usual, and Ishmael has powerful identities for both teams. Putting Faust and Yisang in support takes away a lot from those teams, and Ishmael has to swap her powerful skills in both teams for Wingbeat. This kind of sacrifice puts your team at an immediate disadvantage, and the max potential Wingbeat only makes up for part of the lost value, while not actually putting you ahead of the curve. To demonstrate this, I want to start off with the Bleed team. Ringing Isang is your main damage dealer of the team, however he is forced to the support bench in favor of higher odds on Wingbeat. Faust also doesn't get to use her N-Corp identity, which could have supported Yisang specifically, and allowed for more bleed on the enemy. Instead, you're forced to put Rodya on the team, so you can use her Rhyme Shank. She has to choose between her N-Corp and Kurakuma identities, neither of which are any good. But for the purpose of Rhyme Shanking, Kurakuma is better because of her Gloom Affinity skill. In fact, for many bleed teams, without Yisang, this will be the first Gloom skill on the team. I personally enjoy using Arcorp Mersault, so his skill 2 is the other Gloom skill of the team, but that is still pitiful considering how much Gloom is needed for Rhyme Shank. You also can't forget that you need Gloom to be left over for Faust's passive to even be activated. Obviously hitting a Rhyme Shank once every 10 turns isn't effective, so you will want to bring more identities that can generate Gloom, but that makes the team even weaker, as it strays further and further away from the optimal composition. There is another problem that lies beneath the surface. Even if you somehow got the necessary ego resources, and if you forget that by this time Yisang would have already finished the fight, there's the problem of the Surge debuff. With no Faust, there aren't any nails to stay on the enemy for more than 1 turn. This means that you're left with only debuffs that are active on the turn they're inflicted. To understand why this is a problem, we have to take another look at Rhyme Shank. At Threadspin 4, this ego inflicts 5 sinking count. You can increase the amount by using the corrosion variant, but as we've established, this team lacks resources for this kind of move. With only 5 count on the enemy, we have exactly 1 count to spare before Wingbeat starts losing effectiveness. This means that we can hit the enemy with exactly 1 coin before we hit them with Wingbeat. The only character in my bleed team that can do that is Kurakuma Roshu. However, she has lower speed than Picot Captain Ishmael, so her going first with Ishmael going second is a rare sight and an extremely situational move order. This means that most likely we have to use another ego skill for debuff infliction. This puts further strain on the ego resource cost of this combination and makes the usage of Wingbeat even more situational. You can move forward without a third debuff, but that means dropping under 33% for a perfect Wingbeat, which only makes it weaker on average. On top of all this, bleed teams are usually built around pierce damage, meaning that the best use case for the team is different from that of Wingbeat. You also get very little gluttony in the skills of the characters, meaning that you can't rely on Resonance to buff Wingbeat's damage. I think it's pretty safe to say that Wingbeat is a detriment to bleed teams. So, let's take a look at syncing. Obviously, this team can stack syncing count without Rhyme Shank. That ego is still widely used in syncing teams, but for the purpose of Wingbeat it's no longer necessary. Instead, we face a different roadblock. Two of them, in fact. First of all, Isang's passive requires you to have 4 lust to activate it, and syncing teams don't produce much lust at all. In fact, the best lust producer of the team is Faust, who is forced to sit on the support bench. You're left with Otis and Gregor if you run him. And while Otis is just slow at making lust, Gregor will actively screw you over by eating up a lot of syncing count and potency with his skill 3, which can push Wingbeat back by another turn if you strike before you can use the ego skill. But even if you win the Gregor 50-50 and get a lot of lust quickly, another problem arises – bleed infliction. This team, as you could expect, inflicts no bleed, meaning that for this purpose you're left with ego skills. And pretty much the only skill that can help you with that is Rodia's Warrior's Cast. However, it only inflicts the base 1 bleed count, meaning that you have to use Wingbeat right after and without clashing. It also means that you once again require a specific move order to pull this off. You either have to last move with Rodion and then first move with Ishmael, or you have to use the ego skills back to back in one turn, which means that Rodia is taking away the passives by using her ego skill and losing sanity. Either way, it's incredibly difficult to hit that full potential Wingbeat in syncing, and you're forced to fall below 33% once again, meaning that this full potential Wingbeat is nothing but a pipe dream when tested in real conditions. Of course, you can build a tailor-made team for Wingbeat, but that forces you to give up the cohesion and power of a meta team, meaning that even if every single one of your Wingbeats hits all 7 heads, your team will still fall behind in terms of damage per turn, making it objectively suboptimal. And realistically, that is all I can say about Wingbeat. No matter how you put it, it's never going to be efficient to use this ego over anything else. But this video is called the Wingbeat phenomenon. And while that is a good title to make people click on the video, I do want to touch on an effect that permeates the minds of Project Moon fans. We've seen this once before in Library of Ruina, when people tried to min-max Boundary of Death, and we see this once again when we talk about Wingbeat in Limbus company. I'm guessing that the best way to refer to this effect is tunnel vision. Many people get so caught up in maximizing the value of one thing that they forget to look around for better options. Such an outlook in game makes a player's ability to build a team much worse, as they can tend to focus around a single aspect of it, ignoring everything else that the team entails. But most importantly, tunnel vision is dangerous in real life. I wouldn't jump to conclusions between a person's behavior in-game and outside of it, but I hope to God the people that justify Wingbeat aren't trying to be artists or musicians, or worst of all YouTubers, because if you put all your eggs in one basket and hyper-focus on one of these wobbly career choices, without a base of conventional skills and knowledge to fall back on if that doesn't work out, you're up for a rude awakening if you're not lucky or talented enough to make your dream come true. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video, and if you want more videos like this, like, comment and share the video. It helps out a lot. Also, Risk of Rain's Secrets of the Storm DLC came out, and I have been grinding that very buggy mess of a game for a couple of days now, so let me know if you would like a video or two on that game in between my Limbus videos. By the way, the Was Here Before 1K club is quickly filling up, so make sure to subscribe to become part of it before it's too late. This was Ultranum, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye!